Welcome to Cognitive Vigilance Podcast. I am here with Rin and Heidi Briones,
What's up,
who's
guys?
the base lesbian. I actually saw you on Timcast and I tried to watch it, but I felt like they weren't letting you talk. Was that just a me vibe or was that a you vibe too?
No, that was definitely a me vibe. Yeah, it was very hard to get a word in
I
edgewise.
know.
So I felt like I had to interrupt to say anything. And I never really had any breakout moments or anything, which is upsetting because, I don't get any good clips or,
Yeah.
really ain't much I can use. But it was an experience. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess
Thanks for
that's why
watching, though. Thanks for
I
trying.
guess that's why it's called Timcast, because Tim doesn't shut the fuck up. God. I
hard,
actually
hard to get in a word in for sure.
Yeah. So give a little bit. Tell
Yeah,
everyone,
sure.
who are you? This is your second time on.
Yeah. So I'm a writer, content creator, and I ran for Congress in 2020 in the good state of Oregon. I live in Portland with my wife, and I like to, fight the culture war a bit on X and have a good time and joke about lesbian stuff. So I'm here to, hopefully add to the conversation.
Yeah. I'm triggered that you call it X. I refuse. I
I
won't do it. I won't.
really,
I
don't
can't.
know.
I'm just like, no, Elon, no. It's Twitter. You can't just change the name on us now. Also,
Yeah.
I
How
don't love
long?
the branding. I know. Eventually, maybe but even the URL is Twitter. There's no way. Is he going to get the X.com?
He has
URL?
X.com. He's had that forever. That was like his PayPal. That's
Why
how he
doesn't
sold.
switch it?
It's probably like really more complicated than we think to like
It's
switch
really
every
not to
single
forward Twitter. Well, maybe because it's not a
like
normal
every
website.
single thing is
Yeah.
connected to that domain. I don't know. I don't know the complications, but I'm sure they're like trying to do it right without breaking the website. And they're like, we're not quite there yet, probably. But yeah, I don't know. I think X will eventually make more sense. But I mean, I agree. I think that we're in this really weird transitionary phase, right? It's like when you're socially transitioning. That's what we're doing right now. We haven't really completed our operation.
Everyone's just trying to
like
figure out.
pre-op still.
I'm just dead naming Twitter
Yeah.
constantly.
Like, what are your pronouns again? Like, or like the aunt and uncle that's still like calling you by your old name and Thanksgiving, and you're like, I told you, I'm Jim now. Yeah.
So, as speaking of Twitter, Rin is not a Twitter person because he's normal.
He's a pillar of his community.
Don't call me normal. That's rude.
I'm just kidding. He's actually
you said
not
you were
normal
involved in your community.
Yeah. I interact with real humans.
Yeah, that's abnormal
that I do.
too.
I mean, what's that like?
So first, let's start with this fun Twitter drama that I honestly didn't make much. I didn't even talk much about it because I just thought that everyone else was doing a damn good job and at making this interesting.
Yeah, it got like how many millions of views at this point? It's crazy.
Yeah. So let's see. This girl, she's Muslim. Samira. Thus, accent needs to be illegal. Women should be banned from doing manual labor like this. There's nothing feminine about American women. American women are literally men. Let's go to some comments. Lebanese women are literally perfect, which literally is a strong word to really put there.
I don't think people know what the word means when they use it. It's just, I do not think you are using that word.
Lebanese women are literally perfect.
It's just a way to trigger people on the internet, You just either way.
Unlike estrogen deficient American women.
Deficient, sure. I don't think that's how estrogen works, but okay.
Yeah.
Like, are you low E? Like, you're such a low E woman. Like,
good morning, y'all. Quick update on the house because I've been pretty terrible about giving y'all these. We took a little break for noodling season and to put out boxes.
I love how she
now
says
that
noodling.
It's dried in, we can do it at our own pace. But here she is. We're gonna stain all that wood a darker brown, and the shutters when we get that on. We'll have handrails, of course. There's the carport over there. Quick run through. All these trusses are gonna be exposed, and we're gonna have old tin in the ceiling. Got Daddy and Paul up there working on a wall we're gonna put up for the upstairs office. And we got Def Leppard playing in the background, of course. Back porch, beautiful view. And then the walkway to the carport.
Looks like a pretty sweet spot.
Yeah, this woman also, noodling is where
she doing any work in that video? First of all, like they're like manual labor. She's just like there. She's not even like she's doing any work in that video.
Just mascotting while her parents are doing hard labor.
Like they're working up there. Here's my TikTok. Just got 1 million views.
Well, and then she does noodling, which is basically catching catfish, where they bite your hand.
And then do they kill them? Is she killing it?
I think they eat it. I think they eat the
She's killing it when she's doing that? Like, it's so gross.
I mean, I'd do it, but I'm very low disgust response. So,
yeah. I wouldn't do that. Like, I'm
catfish, if it's eating like healthy stuff, they're pretty tasty. The problem is they'll eat almost anything, so they can come out.
Yeah, they become. I think it's catfish that will become cannibals if you do like aquaponics with them or something, and like you don't feed them enough, they'll eat each other.
Yeah.
And so she goes, high value men should become passport bros.
God, she's just using every like
Wait, what's a passport?
She's using every like red pill keyword that she could find. Like so a passport bro is basically like an American, or I guess like a guy from the UK too, that gets a passport obviously and goes and finds a woman outside of his country because they're so much better. So that's like a whole other the passport bros, where they're like, because American women are horrible and masculine, and that's why they have to go to other countries to find real ones.
Is this different than sex tourism? It's like serious.
Yeah, sex tourism. Yeah, sex tourism would be just going and getting a prostitute in another country, which they do as well. But this would be actually finding like a long-term partner.
Yeah, they're trying to find a wife.
Yeah,
I thought sex tourism was like going to play like white guys going to Japan, where like they're like an object of sexual desire. I didn't realize that sex tourism was going to places where
usually sex tourism means like you go to Thailand and get some like hookers kind of thing. It's not really like
because I knew of people who would go to places where like I guess like there's different places where people become popular because of whatever, so it's like
that's just being white in Asia.
If you're white and you go to Japan, you get very popular.
Right. That's what I thought.
That's just called being white in Asia. That's not sex tourism.
But all right. Well, see, this is good. You guys educated me. I don't know. I'm a fucking.
That's what I'm here for.
You learn something new every day.
You really need to know this stuff in your community, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of sex tourism over here.
And this lady was very opinionated about this whole thing. Many young women in this generation have grown up not knowing any homemaking skills because their feminist parents thought that female chores were inferior and worthless. This is what the trad movement is all about in its best iteration, relearning and valuing these skills. She also said some shit about how like being a tomboy was like a mental disorder, which I mean that bothers me because that's also how you get people confused when they're tomboys and then they think that they have gender dysphoria and they're actually just a tomboy who likes things that are traditionally considered masculine activities. So it's like I fucking hate this particular narrative that these women are kind of trying to push, because I think it can be confusing, and that's not just harmful to women. It's harmful even like trans people. They shouldn't like it either, because it's also harmful when people transition and they're not trans and then like they have to detransition, and that's not good either. So it's like I don't understand how this is considered like a beneficial narrative, because
damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah.
Because
it's radical gender ideology on either end. I mean, it's the same thing that the far left does, the far right is doing. It's horseshoe theory, where you're like, I think that's the post that I made. Like, there's no difference between this and radical gender ideology, because if you're saying if you're female, you must be this exaggerated version of feminine, and if you're male, you must be this exaggerated version of masculine, then okay, where does that leave everybody that's in between, which is like almost everybody? like okay, so we should transition then if you're like a little bit manly or of a woman, supposedly, by whatever standard that is, or if you're like a little bit of a feminine dude, then you should just be turned into a woman. Like that, it's all the same, ideology at the core.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way.
But she's like, these tomboys never grew up with like homemaking skills. What's funny is that like I grew up in a house where like that was very pushed on me. I had to cook every Sunday, like for my family, and like I was taught those skills, but I was also a tomboy because I wanted to be like my brothers, So like I liked video games and I liked playing outside and I liked doing things. So like I feel like there's almost like you can also be both. Like who's to say that girl who catfishes, who noodles, who does noodling, who's to say that she doesn't know how to cook a meal?
She's feminine too. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, she's not masculine. Like, she's not butch in any way. Like I wouldn't be like, that chick's butch, or like even think she was a lesbian. Like if I saw her, I'd be like, that is like a straight woman. Like that's what I would think. And like she just has like those hobbies because she's where she's from. And
That's
like the area
exactly
she's
what I
in.
would read. Yeah, that's just like the way people are. I don't know. I feel like rural women are gonna have a bunch more skills than So
like this is America too. It's like they're trying to compare the Middle East where women have no rights and can't do shit to like the wild, wild West. Like literally where like we had to do everything. Like a woman had to do everything. Like whether you're on the farm or you were literally like a cowgirl or like you were, whatever it was, women and men were doing it all. And we just had to. And in other parts of the world, it wasn't like that. It was very much strict gender roles, but we never really had that firmly in this country.
We did.
Well, I don't know, like
we weren't allowed to. There was legislation against pants until 1923 in the United States.
Yeah, but what were the guys wearing? They were wearing heels and I don't know.
For women, there was legislation against them to wear pants. It wasn't like universal everywhere. There were places that were legislated, like had trouser bans basically until 1923. So like there was traditional gender roles, which was like, it was less in rural areas though. So you have to think like there was the cosmopolitan areas like New York City and Boston, right? And those were actually where the anti-feminists lived. They were very anti-suffragettes because they thought that it was going to affect their philanthropy work, because they had different ways of, they were very privileged. They didn't care, about voting or any of these things. So, I mean, there were those traditional, gender roles pushed on women, but rural women, I think, didn't have that as much, but also rural states were the first to really get the right to vote and to push for it, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah, because the women were doing all the work there. And I mean, you had, there's a show on, I don't know where it's on, with the like lesbian who, she's actual, what's her name? Anyway, she's she's basically she's like a landowner and all this stuff like way early. And she dresses like a dude and like acts like a dude, but everyone knows she's female. And that was going on like a lot. Like you had to maybe like, dress a certain way and act a certain way or have money or like whatever it was, to be a, landowner or something to like get that status. But that was going on here. Whereas in other countries, they're just not used to that like at all. Like that's just like not an experience they had because they didn't have to like conquer a fucking new territory, in the recent history. Like that's not something that like was going on. So they just have a different lived experience and a different history of, being established in a particular area versus no, we have to actually like move westward and, get in land and like do all these different things that seem masculine to, other people. And it's like, no, but that's just like what everybody had to do. And other countries don't relate to that, I don't think, as much as, Americans do. And it can be confusing to the people to be like, well, why are women like doing that stuff? And it's like, because everybody had to do, like everybody had to pitch in and learn how to noodle or whatever the heck at some point. And
unless you were like really rich.
Well,
right.
The really rich people didn't. Like, obviously, those women got to be the Victorians, like the Victorian culture did come here, but they weren't the Wild West, we should say.
But I like that even our media depictions of those moments, like you would have like TV shows of like the Wild West and the woman in like a full dress with like the kind of like fashion of the era and shooting a gun because like, the husband was like out doing whatever, and you're like kind of classic. And so like even in those depictions, the women were doing these classically masculine acts, but still like dressing like feminine. It was like you always had the like big blue like dress.
Yeah, okay, Gentleman Jack. That's who I was thinking of. I'm sorry, but like that was in the 1800s, right? And Lister, and like there was like those kind of characters that like very popular that we didn't like. Yeah, right. Go ahead.
It's weird that we would focus on these masculine actions being fine because they'd be dressed, they'd be wearing a dress, and so it's like, oh, it's all feminine because they're clearly a woman, and therefore the actions they're doing are feminine. I don't know. Right. It's like we were talking about this before the show, where it's like if it's a very clearly like a woman doing a thing, to me that feels like that is an inherently feminine act, in the same way like masculine acts are like if you're a masculine person doing a thing.
Yeah, well, I made a joke. I was like, somebody, I think it was, I forget who, that Sod guy, but he was also involved in this.
Yes.
Something where he's like, women shouldn't work outside, and like, what kind of man lets their women work outside? So I just flipped it, and I was like, yeah, like men shouldn't work inside. Like, what kind of woman lets their man like work inside? Like what? Like like an office or like at his computer? Like it's so like that's not manly. And it's like he looks totally metrosexual. So I was like making fun of him because I'm like, dude, you literally probably are like an online influencer or like, or like a trader or something, or like do crypto. I don't know. And like, you don't look masculine. You probably like never got your hands dirty ever. It's not like you like a blue collar dude, like saying this stuff, because then that would have more credence. But you have these like metrosexual dudes that like just do online work that talking about what's masculine and feminine. And it's like, come on, you're not even in a traditional man role. Like men typically were doing very hard labor. They were going to war, they were in the mines, and now they're like, having opinions on the internet. So like nobody's nobody has like traditional gender roles anymore.
I know. Yeah. I do think so. One thing that I did get into a fight with Nuke, who we had Nuke on. I like Nuke, but I do disagree with this perception that femininity is what did he say? The definition of femininity always has and always will belong to men. And basically this idea that femininity is based on what men are attracted to you. So you're feminine if you're hot, and if men think you're hot, then you're feminine, and if they're not attracted to you, then you're not feminine. So like if an ugly girl was noodling, she's not feminine, but if a hot girl's noodling, she's feminine. Do you know what I mean? Like
kind of true.
Like there's like this definition that like if you're hot, then that's what's feminine, and with men, I guess it's like is that the same? So but it's not the action, right? It's the attraction.
I think it's just like, I think because women have gotten more, powerful in their sexual selection, that we actually have more say kind of in what we think is attractive to men than we ever have. And so men are kind of like, wait, like, like we're supposed to be the ones having the say, because I think overall that point is correct that, whoever has, more power in, sexual selection gets to kind of decide like, hey, what do I think is attractive, and kind of push that out more. But now we're kind of more on an equal playing field. So you'll have like women being like, no, only tall guys are hot, or like all these different things, and it's like, whereas before you didn't have that choice. Like you'd be like, well, I just look pretty and I hope that like, a guy likes me, like in hopes that he thinks I'm hot. But now it's like, oh no, I can go out and find a guy that I think is hot, and like to be like, hey, and get with him and be like, I think he's hot. So now I have my different standards. And so since we're both pushing like what we think is attractive on each other, it's clashing, right? And it's like, well, wait, no, I don't care if you think I'm not hot because I'm tall, because you're masculine, or like whatever, like it's just like a whole like a fight, whereas opposed to like it used to be just like that, like a woman just had to be hot and be attractive and be pretty, and then it's like that's feminine then, and no one's gonna say she's masculine if a lot of dudes like her and want to get with her.
I think we also have to deal with like the stratification of things, where like some people, like somebody finds something attractive that is like almost the opposite of what somebody else finds attractive culturally. Like you have like the hyper masculine being really attractive in one direction, and the hyper like neutral, I guess, being like the kind of like, oh, let's have an extreme elimination of gender, and then that's what they find much more like kind of like to be drawn to, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. There was like that picture of like a hot hetero guy versus a hot homosexual guy like these days, and it was like, and the hetero guy that's considered hot now is like pretty feminine, and then like the gay dudes are so
It's just
like,
a fucking jacked, yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? Like, so this is like hot to women now, but then like the only hot, the little like masculine dudes are gay. Like, what's going on? You know? Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wait, so then it's like because the game. Well, I don't know because doesn't it depend on where you are on like the gay scale? Like if you're like a top or a bottom, because like a lot of bottoms would.
I mean,
be
you
more
have there's a
feminine
bunch of
depending on-
different categories in there. You got your
Yeah.
bears, you got your daddies,
Yeah.
you got your fucking
Yeah, I think like it's swayed more towards the masculine because I think straight dudes are kind of looking more feminine. I don't know. I don't know what that dynamic is, but I do feel like, yeah, straight guys in general, like if you look at the actors that are popular and you kind of just pull up what's that guy's name? The skinny one that's like
Chalamet from
the
Dune.
guy in Dune.
yeah, Timothy Chalamet. Yeah, so him. He's like pretty feminine, right? But he's like the hot dude for like, you know, the young Gen Z girls or whatever. And then you're like, okay, so then gay men are kind of like, well, I kind of want the opposite of that. Like, what am I looking for? Every gay man that I talk to lately doesn't want twinks anymore. They all like, they'll be like, oh, what kind of guy do you like?
We're going back to the Roman Empire.
Yeah, like I like a manly dude, like a manly guy, and I'm like a manly guy. Is that like okay? That's like really hard because like
you're allowed to be manly if you're super nerdy or otherwise like kind of like shit. Like Henry Cavill is like classically like jaw and like muscular, but everybody seems to find like Geralt and Superman and all these things. He's like super sex icon, at least for people I know. But again, I think it's because he's a huge nerd. So it's like you get like a pass by looking that way.
I'm trying to think who was like the male icon when I was like 18, like the guy that everyone thought
George
was hot.
Clooney, Brad Pitt, Leonardo
Brad Pitt,
DiCaprio.
for sure. Brad Pitt was huge.
I'm like, none of these people were people. I feel like I've always simped for female actresses more, which is kind of because I'm like thinking of like who did I like, and I was like Mila Kunis. Like I also love Ashton Kutcher. I think that's kind of my
long
Ashton
hair,
Kutcher
skinny.
and Mila Kunis. Those are like
that was more like the type though. Back then it was like clean shaven, right? Like kind of like pretty boy a bit, but not like feminine or anything. They're still masculine, but they were like more pretty. And now it's like beards. And I don't know. There's also like just phases and things that we go through in culture and how things get pushed and where we end up. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'd say that things are becoming more androgynous, it feels like, just in general. I think that, people are just attracted to a more wide variety, that they have been in the past. And a lot of people are having a hard time dealing with that. So like, well, where do I sexually fit into that? Like, who is going to find me attractive if they're not already paired up? A lot of people are very insecure about that and like want to find their place and be like, well, who's going to find me attractive? And, and if they don't find me attractive, then screw them. They must be, whatever, unattractive themselves or whatever else.
I definitely think a big part of like why gender is dialogued so much is because of there's been a push for like downplay of gender roles or just an androgenization of like let's go gender neutral. And so then the people who are like, but I like being having a label and I like being in this category. So then it's like people kind of almost like feel like it's under, which I think the people who who wanted to push for that were going for inclusivity and like let's do less harm to these people. But then you get people like people on the internet start screaming about stuff, and then it's like, oh well, now these things are under attack, and it just gets fucking blown out of proportion.
Well, the issue with like a lot of the non-binary dialogue I didn't like was that if you did, because for me it's like, sometimes I want to wear a dress, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to wear makeup, sometimes I want to play, sometimes I want to do all of these things, sometimes I don't. But it felt like if you were more like wanted to be feminine, like they wouldn't like that. Like it felt like it was like you're I've been accused of it for my show. What did they say? That it's like what was it?
For Cult of Art?
Yeah, it was something to do with how I mainly hire feminine women, like that femme presenting. But I don't really know how they worded it. But I guess that's like the gist was that I was like that I hired a lot of women. What?
Who said that to you?
A non-binary person.
I mean, okay, then. I mean, so they just want more representation of,
yeah. Well, but what's funny is that I have people in my show that are non-binary. They just are femme presenting. So it's like kind of funny that they think that. But like it's because I guess there isn't like there's been some androgyny play, but it hasn't been like I guess as
Annalisa did a whole fucking dance that was like the Colorado boy thing was really great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but obviously she's straight.
I mean, I don't know. It's like you can never win, right? You're like,
I know.
You didn't have any transracial, non-binary, like queer people represented.
I mean, it's interesting to me because in my real world dealings, I feel like I navigate through those spaces where and I've never had a problem like using very gendered language and then switching gear. Like to me, it's almost like a filter, like a lens. It's like, all right, this line of dialogue, is like we're just talking trends, and it's like guys, girls. Like if I'm doing a stand-up comedy bit or something, I can say that, and nobody's upset about it because it's like, oh yeah, I'm just fucking cutting to the chase, and I can have a line. But then other times when it feels like you get into once you get into the weeds, I pull out a lot of my language and I get very individual. It's like, oh, well, this, it's like, this is a definition of femininity. It was like, no, it's that person's definition of femininity or something. Right. It's not. So yeah, exactly. There's always
something. Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. Okay. So someone actually tweeted to me right before I started, which was feminine is behavioral, not aesthetic. And I mean, so what do you think? Do you think what is femininity, right? Like, is it demeanor? Is it like, what is it exactly that people are trying to kind of figure out? Because like there is something there. And I'm still kind of trying to kind of figure it out because I think maybe the aspect of like nurturing, right? But you can be nurturing and also do male activities, right? So that nurturing is a feminine quality, right? So, and then masculine, what would be those things? I think that it seems like people are kind of pinpointing on like these activities as what is feminine when it's not really that. It's like underneath that. What do you think feminine is, Heidi?
That's a good question. I've thought about it. I think it's not like it's not a firm thing. It's not completely objective, right? So like we've talked about how things can be a little bit relative, like depending on the person, depending on the culture, depending on the time period, depending on so many different factors. But I think in general, what femininity like definition would be things typical of a female, but that could be, so wide of a range, right? And these things change so much. So when I think of femininity, I think of kind of two facets. I mean, you think of one, definitely the looks. I mean, it's really hard to picture like a very butch looking woman and say she's feminine, right? Like, let's say she does everything feminine. Like, she doesn't do any male activities. She's like a homemaker, but she's still butch. Like, I still would be like, I mean, yeah, she's kind of like, she's a butch lady. Like, even though she's like, it's like there's butch straight women that are like homemakers, but I'm like, yeah, she's a butch lady,
Yeah.
So she's not completely feminine. And then the same thing for a man, right? I mean, it's like, you could have a man who's, pretty, I don't know, effeminate, I guess you could say, was like kind of the term, or like he seems maybe a little gay, but like maybe everything that he does in his life, like he's straight and everything else is like he's masculine, but you might not be like he's the manliest dude ever. But then you could have like a bear who's like a gay dude who's like, you go talk to him, he sounds super gay, but he's like big and butch. So I think that there's so many different aspects of it. But I think that, I mean, femininity and masculinity kind of have to work against each other, right? So if whatever, there's like polarities, right? Like an extreme feminine, person versus an extremely masculine person, and they could be of either sex, but it would be like just the stereotypical, like as much as soft as you could get would be femininity, like as nurturing, as soft, as pretty, as like everything that would be, the soft side of things, and then the harsher side, like rough around the edges and hairy, or like whatever it is, or like does like tough things, strong, muscular, like on the other side of things. So in our culture, that's what, femininity and masculinity means. Men are the stronger ones, women are the softer ones. And then you're going to find everything on that whole spectrum. But I do think it's both. You can't just say like, you can't take a super femme woman who's like completely like in heels and makeup and like perfect tits out and everything, and she's doing noodling or whatever else, and be like, oh, she's totally butch and masculine. Like, to me, that's just weird. Like, it's like, no, she's somewhere on the scale, right? That's why we have things like she's a tomboy, or she likes that as a hobby or whatever else. And you can't do that to a man either, really. Like, I mean, there's been very masculine men throughout history that have had cross-dressing as like one of their things that they would go and do. And like rich dudes that were straight with like families and like not even gay. That was like something they enjoyed doing for years. And you're not going to be like, well, that's not the most masculine activity, but like, in every other aspect, this is a masculine person. So I just think it has to be both, and it has to be so contextual that you can't just be like, this person's femme or mask. But when it comes down to it, it just is, it's the juxtaposition. It's like, if I'm standing next to somebody that's more masculine than me, then I'm going to look more feminine. If I'm standing next to a girl that's more feminine, I'm going to look super butch, right? And so it's always like in relation socially, right, to the other people around you. So it's very odd. So like when Samira is talking about it, she's saying they're more butch than me. She's not even saying they're masculine necessarily. She's saying they're so much more masculine than me. That's why she's like, oh, we're literally perfect. Like, people like me are perfect. I'm the perfect example of femininity. And anybody less feminine than me is like literally a man, because that's her standard, right? And so it's like, that's kind of like, it's always in juxtaposition, or always like comparing to somebody else and like where they stand and where their status is. And she sees like her status as being higher than this girl who's doing a masculine activity. And she doesn't like that people think these girls are hot or whatever, And so it's always like, we're very social creatures, as Red was saying before we started. And it's always going to be comparing one another, and always like, what's, who's more masculine than who's more feminine than who in comparison.
Yeah, I love the idea of it being like constantly relative and always just a direction, like something.
Because he loves relativism.
I'm not talking. There's my moral relativism coming. It strikes again. But I do think we struggle with over defining. Like, I feel like there's so many activities and like aspects of a I that people want to define as either masculine or feminine and have no need for it. Like, I think with English, we don't see how like absurd it is, but like in gendered languages where every noun has to have a different gendered pronoun, like tables are masculine and chairs are feminine. And it's like, why? Like, we just have all these aspects that, so like all the things that we feel is feminine make sense. But then like, why is fishing masculine or feminine? Like, why can't it just be fishing? You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
noodling,
it's kind of masculine because it's like kind of dirty, and like you're getting your hands out there, and like you're using strength. There's like an element of strength to it. So I would say it's not like the most feminine thing ever, because there is that element of like danger, dirtiness, strength, like, kind of being out there. So I could see that. Like, I don't think it's,
you can make an argument for it.
Yeah, or anything. You can more masculine than other things, right? It always has to be compared to something else.
Right. That's true.
Is it more masculine than like breastfeeding your baby? Well, yeah. I mean, like, there's like certain.
But I mean, like, to me, like dirty things, like like cleaning a house, or even just preparing a meal can be a very like kind of like dirty aspect of that kind of thing. Although I guess taking the trash out is a more traditionally masculine chore. So
I hate taking the trash out.
I hate it too. I hate it too. I make my wife do it now because I like cut my leg one time, like taking the trash out, because I'm just like, I have these little short arms and legs, and I'm like,
I
take the trash out in my house, so I got no ground to stand on.
Better. Like, it's like you have a trash bag and you're like a big strong man that can lift his arm out and keep it away from you and just do it real fast. Or I can struggle and like fall down the steps and like things falling out. It's like, it makes no sense. So it's just, there's certain things that are more about strength, and I think strength definitely does fall into masculinity, like if being very, very strong. So I could see that. But of course, women are physically stronger. They're just stronger. I mean, women are strong in other ways, of course. There's like plenty of ways that we're stronger. We have a higher pain tolerance, and there's all kinds of other things. But just general physical strength, I mean, yeah, that definitely falls on the males, in our species.
Isn't it? But like, so women have more strength in like their legs, and men have
Legs
more
and core,
strength
yeah.
in their arms. Yeah, and their core, and men have more like upper body strength.
Chest, back, and arms. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's all trends. I mean, my problem, I think, is when we, there's fucking 9 billion of us. So there's a whole bunch of women who are stronger than a whole bunch of men. And, it's like if they pair up and then the stronger woman is doing the like, so now is it, do you get
I
into
feel like it would be very unlike, like, I don't want to like say that that's not going to happen, but I just feel like a woman would probably be like a really strong woman would probably want someone stronger than her.
so
Or equal in strength, because I feel like if he was weaker than her, then she probably wouldn't be
So
attracted to him.
did you meet my partner Hannah before? So she was pound for pound easily like way stronger than I was. She was a bodybuilder, and I
You
like.
are also a unique person.
Yeah, that's not fair, right?
No, but it is true. Like I mean,
that's like a total fringe case too. That she was a bodybuilder. That she was like, I mean, that's
I mean,
not...
I know several people who are like, and not even bulky. Like I still thought every person who I like have been drawn to who is like super strong, they were still very feminine. Like it wasn't like they had like, done
what does
steroids.
femininity mean to you? Actually, let's get to that.
I do have a lot of like, are we talking in a romantic sense or in like a,
Well, in general, what does it mean? So you said she was a bodybuilder, but she was feminine. What does that mean to you? What do you mean
like,
by feminine?
She had like, I guess like what you would call like a classic feminine shape, right? Like the hourglass figure still. So her like, like waist was still thinner than her hips and shoulders, even though she was very muscular and like wore like slinky dresses when we would go out, just had fucking.
So it is an aesthetic.
Well, so.
Right. But then that's like a taste thing, right? That's like your personal
correct
taste, because other guys might be like too muscular for me. That's masculine.
That's a big thing on the internet. And so for me, that's what it's like. If I'm talking about feminine in an attractive sense, that's a whole different context than like, I have a heart, like, to me, I'm fine with people being like, this is my femininity. This is my because to me, being masculine is not giving a fuck. So like, some dude who like wears dresses and fucking shoots guns and smokes cigars is fully masculine. But I don't understand, like, why do I need, like, it's very singular to me. Like femininity doesn't need to go any further than me. Like I see somebody who is like my feminine and I'm into it. And for a lot of people,
do you think she's more feminine than you when you think that?
Yeah,
right. So it's like in comparison to you, right? You wouldn't go for somebody that you think is more masculine than you, right?
So I learned recently that most people have a very like heavy attachment to their gender. I might be a person who like doesn't and is just kind of aware. Like I'm aware that I have a very like masculine person, right? I'm like 6'3", strong. I don't know. There's all kinds of like attributes that people like you like classically like attribute to being like masculine, and I fit those. But if I woke up, in like a woman's body the next day, I would just be like, all right, I guess I'm a woman. Like then just roll with it and like try to like I don't know how to do any of the stuff that I need to do, but
what do I do with these boobs? What's going on?
Yeah. It's like, I got some parts I gotta watch some YouTube videos on real quick.
What do I do with this? Just spray it with water? I don't know. That's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting aspect of like, to me, again, because I think it's all stuff that people like made up. Like I do believe in like the trends, and I do think there are like, the biological like derivations, but I think those are just influencing the fact when, like I try to think about it from like the scientific perspective of like some like future anthropologist or like an alien comes to Earth and is like describing the human species, right? It's like, oh, here's the male of the species, here's the female, here's the like behavioral things they have. It just falls apart because of how divergent we are. Like you could never categorize us by behavior the way we used to with like other species, right? There's no singular behaviors that I think
I think that there was considered singular behaviors for a while. So
I agree.
So, I mean, for example, being intelligent was considered masculine, being rational is considered masculine. Like these were things that were considered, more rational. Women, I mean, but that's the thing. that's kind of what, like, obviously, I think most people would say, would you consider a really smart woman not feminine because she's smart?
I
Like,
think a
I
lot
don't
of
feel like
men would,
you
honestly.
think?
I think men get very offended by really smart women, and I
Yeah.
think that they see them as bitches or, or not attractive. Like you just the way that men will talk about it in person and online is just sort of like I feel like they want to be the smarter one. It's not every man, but just in general, like I feel like they would prefer to be smarter
Mhm.
than their woman. That would make them feel better. And if there's like a woman who they feel like is overstepping them, whether in the workplace or like in a social interaction or whatever, that she's immediately like a bitch, and she could just be having a different opinion, or being smarter than them, just like outwitting them. And they don't like it. Like I've seen them visually like cower or like not like, me or other people, other women that I know around me that just, are basically just smarter than them and outwitting them in some aspect. And I don't think that's attractive to most of them. There are men that do like that for sure. But they tend to be the type that like to be a little more submissive and don't mind like having a dominant partner. But I don't think most men feel that way. I feel like most men would prefer to be dominant. And so
The
yeah.
the women with
And
PhDs and the engineers who I know, very like kind of classically attractive women, they often it's a
have a hard
common
time
theme
with
for
dating, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yep, they do, yeah.
Well, I think there's studies that say like the higher a woman's IQ is, the harder it is for her to get. I think it's like after 100, I think it's every 16 points higher. Like her percentage of like getting married goes down.
Yeah.
Well,
And part of that is the men and part of it's them too, though, because if
Yeah.
you're a very smart woman, you're very turned off by a lot of people, right? You find men irritating if they're too dumb. And so you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like having a son, like I can't just explain like literally everything to you. Like I need
yeah,
someone on my level. And then how are you going to find that? Then it's like your dating pool is so small to find someone on your level. And if you do find someone on your level, they maybe want someone below them. They want someone less smart than them because they want to be more dominant. Or it's
Mhm.
just like a not a good match because like you're just too I don't know, aggressive with each other, I guess. You argue too much. And so it doesn't work. But yeah, I mean, I think that's very important to think about though, is like what I think, yeah, intelligence has generally been seen as more masculine. And I think that doesn't matter how a woman looks, if she and you can see that with like, leadership, like politicians and how, women have a hard time breaking through, in politics because there's a very fine line. Like you have to be pretty attractive. You can't be like totally hideous, but like, but you can't be too attractive either, right? Because if you're too attractive, then it's like they
but
have to
nobody
take
takes you
seriously.
seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So there's like a fine line where it's like, you can't be like,
yeah.
a wildebeest, but you can't be hot either. That's why like Tulsi Gabbard has had like a hard time where they're like, she's too hot. Even Joe Rogan, he made a joke, but he's like, she's too hot to be president. You can't have like a hot president. Like America's not ready for a hot president. Probably for a female president, but not a hot one. So there's something to do with that too. It's like there's the hot smart like ratio or something. How hot and smart is a woman allowed to be? It's a good question.
That's
Yeah.
brutal.
It's
That's brutal.
so brutal. Oh my god. Because even like, and you're correct. Like, if you are smart, because if you're smart, if you tell a man that they're wrong, men don't like that. So if you're smart and like you're like, oh, actually, you are woman splaining, like they do not like that at all.
No,
So,
they even have a
But
joke about that's like a meme, right? Actually, like don't come in here,
Actually.
Karen, or like Karen or whatever.
that's a
Yeah.
cultural thing. We need to condition men to hear no more often from an earlier age. Like
oh boy,
not a I do. I think
you're gonna get a lot of hate in the chat.
no. I think because like not being able to like handle rejection is such a fucking driver of so many problems right now, and it's like it's just a part of life. And like guys are I've met women who are bad at this too, but I think that culturally we already drill that in probably way too much. But I think that like men think they're the expert. Like I have literally seen a guy who like just learned something turn and explain it to a woman who like it's like they have a fucking dissertation on this shit, and they're like, "Oh, really? You're gonna explain
Men
to
love
me?"
it. They love that shit.
And then they like correct them, and it's like you need. It's yeah. I don't know, but it was something that had to be drilled. I know it took like getting like a science degree. That road is like, all right, have this idea, and then they just tear it down, and then it's like, all right, I have a better idea, and then they tear it down. Like it's like almost a training aspect, in the same way that like firefighters have to be conditioned to fucking run into like burning buildings. Like being able to like detach your your ego from ideas is such a
That's why I think like married men are so much easier to get along with, because they're so used to that, like in their private life. Like a woman's probably just like tearing them to bits, like all the time. Like no, you're wrong again, hon. Like, it's this, like, and he's just like, okay. And then like when he goes out of the real world, he's like so much more humble, But when it's like you have a single dude who's like no one's telling them anything, you can kind of tell the difference. So I always say, it's nice to work with married men. They seem to be a little more, in tune with what their actual intelligence level is.
I do think there is something to be said about what you were saying earlier in regards to like the culture, because like that guy Saad, like clearly Middle Eastern. Like there was, it seemed like a lot of the Middle Eastern men and women they had their particular views on what masculinity and femininity looks like.
It's very rigid in their culture, right?
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, Samara wouldn't like when she said about Eastern women were superior. I posted a picture of a bunch of women in hijabs, and just was like, is this what you mean by femininity? Because even she doesn't do that. I mean, I don't know where she's from.
Lebanese. Yeah.
Well, she even said she wasn't Lebanese, which is
not.
Why no. And I was like,
somebody said Pakistan. I don't know.
Yeah, I think she's Pakistani.
Okay.
So, but even then, it's like, okay, in Pakistan, that like hijabs are the norm. So even you wouldn't be considered classically feminine in your culture that you're from. So how would you? I guess that's probably why she picked Lebanese and not Pakistani women as an example of true femininity. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. I really don't know. I can't pin her. She's just basically trying to, obviously get clicks and engagement with the red pill, Andrew Tate adjacent community. And it's just like, it's really bizarre. So it's really hard to peg what's going on there and what their standards would even be, because these are terminally online people. So I don't really think they're in tune with like what their culture is doing anyway. They're just making it up and being like, this is just what I want to pick on, because my whole thing is Western women are worse than Eastern women, and men should leave, and be passport bros, which is a totally Tate adjacent thing. Like everybody says that, like Tate says that, Zuby says that, like anybody who's like friends or adjacent with him in any way is like pushing this passport bro thing, and American women or Western women are horrible and they're masculine and they're going to take all your money, in the divorce and like all this stuff. And it's like, how much of that is accurate? I mean, some might be, and, but some is just completely fabricated and just, them trying to make themselves feel better or trying to make, money and get engagement.
Also, is that because it feels like it's so weird, because it feels like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in a lot of those movements, which makes it feel like in like the red pill or even in the trad space, it's like all women are whores, all women are horrible, but you need to get married and find one, like you need to get one, or like in the red pill space, it also it feels like there's a lot of like counter ideas that are kind of like fighting each other in their own movement, which is probably confusing for people that are in there. Like I feel like, because if you're being told all women are bad, also don't like masculine women, aka women that don't conform to these particular gender roles, you don't want a girl boss, right? You don't want these particular qualities, and then it's like, okay, so you're kind of making it harder for these people to actually find someone.
Yeah. They don't want them to find anyone, because then they lose like a viewer, right? They lose like a customer. Yeah, they lose a customer. If they really improved men's lives and made them happy and found them the perfect person, then they'd have nobody else watching their bullshit, right? I mean, so it's just, I think that's kind of what it comes down to. It's their whole vibe is actually confusion. And it's very sad, because a lot of their, viewers and listeners are men that are young, impressionable still, possibly very young teenagers. A lot of them don't have a positive male role model at home to like tell them like, what the hell are you doing? Because I've heard from dads that find out like their kids watching like Andrew Tate or something, and then they'll go and sit down and be like, teach them like, hey, this is what life's really about. This is what, women are about. And then they're like, oh, okay. And the kid will kind of get over it. There's like stories of that where it's like, and then it's fine. But if they don't have that, if they don't have, like a man, older brother, dad, whatever, to come in, then this is all they're left with. So they're just steering them in any direction that they like. I mean, to keep them, on board and buy my next program, buy my $10,000 course that teaches you how to make money. And then you can go and get, a woman in another country because you'll have a bunch of money and you'll be cool and you'll have a Lambo. But like now you're a loser, right? And like, so as long as you're a loser, you need us, and women are the reason you're a loser, and they all suck and they're all, whores or whatever. It's, it's just like an alternate reality that it's like, this is not like what's really happening. Like you can go and find someone. Statistically, like the most likely is around where you live and where you grew up is where you're going to find someone. So like, literally around where you live would be the most likely place for anybody to find someone. But no, get a passport. Oh, bye.
I know Brandy's at a remote location right now, so it looks like she's having some tactic. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's just ridiculous because get a passport when that's like actually the least likely like you would be to find someone, right? It's like the opposite. So just ludicrous. Like really get a passport. Like, okay, so go get a passport and then go and travel to another country. You don't know the language, you don't know the culture, like, and you're probably like some loser. Like, how is that going to work for you? Like, you have to be like pretty confident and cool to like even go and pick up, a chick in any country, right? Or like have a bunch of money. And you're not really going to be able to do that. It's much more easy. It should be easier for somebody to teach you how to find somebody in your area. Be like, hey, these are some places you could go and meet somebody, get involved in a sport, do an activity, like go to the gym, like do something positive and like start talking to more people, go to church, whatever, be in your community and you will meet somebody eventually. Like if you're just out there, or no, get a passport and go do something way more difficult. Like go find somebody in a totally different culture.
Where you don't speak the same language. Right. And there's going to be, but I think that they like that. Like I actually know guys that go for women that don't speak English, which is
there are, that is the thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but that's it's the dream that there's a potential there. Like if you know all the people around you and you know what the culture is, you know that you're not going to meet somebody who's this like crazy like ideal person that you've dreamed up in your head, but maybe in this other country. So it's always the possibility that like
possibility is that's money that sells. It definitely sells. Exactly. It's a sizzle. But the reality is like if you're a 4, like you're not going to go to another country and get a 10. Like it's just like it's probably not going to happen. Like you should probably like either improve yourself or like go for another 4 like that lives around you and like save yourself a lot of trouble and love the one you're with. Like it's like you just can't constantly be thinking of this ideal person. It just doesn't work in reality. Like the best person for you is the person that has shared values and understands you and like is kind to you and wants whatever you want out of life. And like it's really so basic. It's not like, oh, it's the the most feminine woman is the best one for you. It's like maybe not. Like you don't know, like maybe that's too much for you. Like feminine women can be a pain in the ass. Like
I was gonna say
maintenance is fucked up. Mega girl, I feel bad for her husband because she sounds high maintenance as shit.
Dude, what the hell? Yeah.
Dude, the medium attractive guys with super hot like partners struggle because they're not equipped to fucking deal with all the attention that their partner gets, even if their partner is super faithful and super fun. Dude, it's fucking hilarious
because a lot. If you're just like a regular dude and you get with this super hot chick that's always getting hit on, like you're gonna feel like crap a lot of times. If you're not confident enough, like you're not going to be able to handle it. It can be a lot to be with somebody super attractive.
As somebody who regularly punches way above my weight, it's one of those things that like I always talk about. Like you have to be super comfortable. And I mean, like I'm not in like monogamous relationships, so if people want to fuck with other people, that also makes it easier. Where I'm like, I don't care if you fuck with somebody. Like if you fuck somebody else, that's not cheating on me. I'm very hard to cheat on, so it makes it easier for me to have those relationships.
Cheating if they lied to you, right?
Correct.
Right.
But then I'm also the kind of person that like, I try to create an environment where people don't want to lie to me. So, I'm always eager to hear that shit. It's never like
that too, but
that's the best way to have an honest dynamic is you have to be willing to hear every possible answer and you have to be eager to hear every possible answer in order to really foster that honest environment. And sometimes you don't want to hear like, yo, that dude fucking fucked me for hours, like a proper fucking, whatever.
So is that how the conversation goes? Like she'll like in detail? Like she'll be like, yeah, it was like way better than your dick, man. It's just like crazy good. Like, is it like that?
I dated somebody who was like, I don't date you for your looks, I date you for your brain. And that was hard to hear. So I did have to do some like sit with that. And I was like,
I go for other guys for the looks part. Yeah. You're just,
which I like
to talk to you. Yeah.
I appreciated that level of honesty. And we did actually have pretty good sex, but it was hard. Like, I don't need you to like lie to me about that. But like I don't know, the way that it was said felt like there wasn't like a lot of empathy behind it, which I would, like, you can tell me that. Like, I know, like, when I have, hot partners who have other, like, I can look at their partner and be like, that's a much hotter person. Like, I'm fully aware.
I mean, are polyamorous women super empathetic?
I think you have two flavors of them.
Okay.
Like, you have the ones who are like, I'm super empathetic, and I like, that's a driver for that big community network thing. And then the like,
sociopathic.
Yeah, I guess you could like call it that flavor of it, where it's just like, very logical driven. Like, why would I, have these sort of things? But I don't think that's the women's side of it. I think that's the same for like the poly men that I know are either hopeless romantics constantly falling in love with every person around them, or like the engineer type where you're like, yeah, that makes sense, like, let's do it that way, and then we'll go and have a lovely time in Aruba. Oh, do you want to go to the sex party? We can, like everything about it is like, yeah, this brings me pleasure. And you're like, does it? I am having a great time right now.
Yes.
And you're like,
I'm very much enjoying myself in this orgy right now. Like,
yeah, exactly. And you're just like
okay.
Someone in chat actually is saying that because you're in open relationships, he's like, he calls himself masculine because you're in open relationships, which, oh my God, that's like the whole other.
I mean, wasn't that what I was originally brought on here for? Because like, so many of the fucking whoever Carrie is, like, I'm like a cuck to these people, but I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. Like, I have like all the sex, like all the flavors. Like, I have two girlfriends, who like, I don't know. I don't know how to like interact with that, because to me, being a cuck is a kink that somebody wants, and somebody like somebody getting cheated on is like dishonesty. It's not like, like the classic definition is somebody having somebody else's kid without them knowing, but that's not, no one's having my kid. Like, I'm not raising someone else's kid. So I don't like, everyone you've slept with has probably slept with somebody else. And so I'm just living in the real.
No, but they don't want that. That's the real femininity.
Right.
It's virginity.
And I went into I just go into the world living the way it is. Like, I just accept the truth of the world, and I don't hide my head in this fucking sand like an ostrich. So I don't know, like,
yeah. So
I'm happy to dialogue about this more, but I think it's funny.
I mean, I feel like it happens at least once a show where you mention that you're in an open situation and someone gets upset in the chat. It's very funny.
It's like the vegan thing or CrossFit. You just wait for them to say it. They're gonna say it at some point. It's like a poly thing. Like, they're gonna talk about it. Like, it's just gonna come out.
So, and in this is so Rin didn't know who Dylan Mulvaney was, and that's how I was like, bro, that's how you ain't on the internet, because they got big on TikTok, right?
He doesn't have time for the internet. He has 2 girlfriends. Now I know why. That makes a lot of sense.
But that's how Dylan got big. TikTok. Yeah, it was like the day in a life, and like it was
day 1 of girlhood.
Yes.
And it was a TikTok, I believe, and like a whole story, and went viral.
Yes. Well, this is their song.
Learn the basics. Fast, look quick, shame, sip champagne. Playing catch up because we missed the pregame. Pull up the group chat where you at, drop a pin. We're doing hot girl shit. Get in. Monday can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning pick up meds. Wednesday retail therapy. Cash or credit, I say yes. Thursday had a walk of shame. Didn't even know his name. Weekends are for.
All right, that's enough of that.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
So my only issue is like, it also comes back to like this discussion of like, what is femininity, right? It feels like Dylan Mulvaney and Samira thinks femininity is the same thing, right? It's like
Yeah.
this kind of
caricature
of what being a woman is.
I go
which is
shopping, I
lounging
do
in
my nails.
lingerie and wearing pink and all this stuff. And it's like, I consider myself a feminist. And like, obviously I fight with rad femmes all the time, and I have lots of feminists don't like me, but like I do consider myself a feminist on like the base level, you know, and which comes down to like I think women should be able to self-actualize in whatever way, you know, like because it comes down to like this crisis of identity that women and men have, and that they're I think women really started to have it the more they were like have more opportunities, but then there was still like this like push of this like what is traditionally feminine, you know, which causes like a little crisis of identity, which I think men are having too. I think it's happening on both sides. So like what bothers me is that it's almost like it's like a regression. It feels very regressive, where it's like trying to bring us like back to like the 1950s, where it's like, oh, and like get my meds in the med cabinet. Like, what is this? Like this 1950s like kind of trope of what like
like see, I thought the meds thing was a much more kind of like, you know, I don't know,
estrogen they're taking or whatever. Like
no, I was thinking that like there's the whole like it's a whole meme in like my partner's like, you know, community situation where she's like hot girl meds, where it's like everybody who like if you're hot, you have like problems, like either digestive problems or fucking, you know, like brain problems or like you know, what so
I don't like that either. I
think hot sounds horrible
because that sounds like I don't like that particular narrative either, because it's also glorifying one mental illness. It's like making it be like, oh, it's hot to be problematic.
No,
it's hot to like.
I think this is
a
TikTok
thing. Is hot, isn't
it? And I feel
TikTok,
and I don't think it should be banned, but I fucking hate TikTok. I also think Twitter sucks too. Like both of these things are very fucking
social media in general.
Yeah, I would say that TikTok and Twitter, those two in particular, I think are extra. Like
they're like in a relationship, actually. I feel like they're dating. I feel like those two social medias are like hardcore, like dating, but it's like it's complicated, you know.
It's dysfunctional, and Instagram's the X
but
that
they
won't
like rely on each other, you know. Like it's like X or Twitter heavily relies on TikTok content. You know, it's like, where do you get, you don't get, and that's, I guess, why Elon wants to make more videos, make it like to get rid of that element, to have like the videos be native. But like any good video that you see or anything that goes viral, it's a TikTok. It's literally a TikTok. Like it's posted on Twitter, and then we go back and forth about it like ad nauseum for like 3 days until we get over it, and somebody else has another TikTok video, and that's just like how it works, right? Like, and so they're in a dysfunctional relationship, and it is harmful. But I think, you know, it's bringing out the worst sides of things. And exactly. So like what you're talking about is how this is stereotypical. It's exactly what Samira is saying, but from the other aspect, it's like, you know, let's be this like caricature, fake version of what girlhood, womanhood, whatever the heck, or female, you know, femininity is, which is, you know, whatever, the heels, makeup, nails, that's what it is. And it's like, okay, but that none of that is a personality, you know, like none of that is like anything healthy or real or good.
You can be feminine and do those things. Like I wouldn't say that like I think that you can do those things and be feminine, but the thing is that isn't what it is. Like that for me, it's like that's not what makes you feminine, because you could do all those things and not be feminine in demeanor or even.
Well, literally, Dylan's a man, so I mean, like I mean, Dylan has a penis, so like I mean, is that really feminine, or are you playing a part? Because you can play feminine. Like I could pretend to be super. I'm not naturally, but like I could easily go and get my makeup done, go get my hair done, go and get some feminine clothes, look like I'm, you know, hyper feminine, and like go out and like have men like gawk at me if I wanted to. Like that, I could like do that. I don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like it disgusts me to think about, but that's like a thing that like anybody can really do. It's performative, and it's just like for show, and it's not anything that's real or based on substance.
But I mean, sorry, so this is going to be my relativistic that's coming in, right? Because like we get to the fundamental nature of that. Like this is, I guess we're going to do the conversation about gender, but to me, like, you know, we just had a whole conversation about like what femininity is defined as, and what, like masculinity is defined as. But we can, like, to me, like I can, there's differences between like cis women, trans women, like cis men, trans men, but those are all like the categories are artificial. Like we drew those lines, and we can, like, I don't know, like it's weird to me that.
What do you mean the categories between, are you saying that the categories between a cis woman and a biological woman are, the lines are drawn, like that we made those lines?
I'm saying that the definition of like what, like, so what is a man and what is a woman, right, is nebulous enough when you get to the, like, because so it's not like there's a bucket and there's a bucket, right? We have, there's aspects of things that go across the board. Like, are you guys familiar with the genetics of like chimerism? Does that mean anything?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't, like, I'm not very detailed on this.
All right, so sorry.
I know what a chimera is.
Mythical creature, right? Like,
yes.
Put together by the different parts. So in humans, and I've seen numbers that put it as high as 20% of people have flavors of chimerism. It depends, because it's basically you're a twin who then ate one of the other twins, but you actually have a heterozygote twin, or a fraternal twin. So not an identical twin. It can happen with identical twins too, but then it doesn't. Then you're genetically the same still. Fascinating. But yeah, so you can have, you can have a brother and a sister as an embryo, and then one of them eats the other one, and now you have an 80% brother, 20% sister. And so what happens? Like, to me, like this is physically happening. Like, we know that this happens, and there's a good percentage of people. But so what happens when you have, the biology of one part in like the brain or somewhere, you know what I mean? Like, it's like how we have this very strict binary, but again, there's 9 billion of us, right? So our lines are blurred, and I think the machinery that we use to describe, like, because we're using like effectively categorization systems that we developed to describe animals, plants, things like that, and they don't hold up for us because we don't conform to those rules. And it's really interesting, because for a long time we probably did, and then at some point we stopped doing the, like, only the strong survive, only the, we just stopped. Everyone's like, we stopped having that kind of pressure, and it allowed all kinds of variations to exist. So now we live in a world where there's all kinds of people who have all kinds of like deviations from the blueprint, right? So I'm not saying that like humans were built to be this kind of way. I'm saying that we have thrown the blueprint away enough that now it's like, people are building furniture and being like, yeah, it's mostly level, like, what? So I don't know. Like, I have a harder time when someone is like, that's a man and that's a, like, you know what I mean? If somebody says like, I'm a woman, like, it's a harder argument for me.
But I feel like you're talking about extreme cases. So like,
so 20%, it's 20% of people could 20%
have. 20% of
he's saying like, ate the twin. 20% of people ate their twin. That's pretty wild.
20% of people are what?
So chimeras, right? I'm not saying that all chimeras are like trans people. It's a much. What I'm saying is that I've seen numbers that put it as high as 20% of people have a sibling's DNA comprising components of their biology. And what's interesting, you can have things that are like digestive issues, right? So like if you don't have if you have incompatible blood. So all right, again, there's 100 cases of documented chimerism in crime, where somebody did a crime that they were like validated for, like, oh, somebody's like, oh, you murdered them, and then you're like, oh, well, we did the DNA test and it's someone else's blood, or like the baby, like you can get like blood tests or DNA tests and things, so that it's been relevant in law, but there's the prevalence of it is much higher.
I actually don't know enough about this, but it still feels like it's an extreme case, because it's like, it's also correlating
like so 20% is the upper limit of like, it could be as high as, let me
yes,
walk
but
that
okay
back.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Please go ahead, Brandy.
I was just going to say that couldn't we correlate this to like, okay, how we discuss like polyamory and monogamy, right? Like I know like polyamory wouldn't work for most people. Monogamy works for most people, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a subset of people that monogamy works for, and that it like, I mean, that polyamory works for, and that like it is what they need, right? But like that's what I mean is like it's like polyamory is an extreme case, and in my opinion, I also think gender dysphoria is an extreme case. Like I don't consider that like the standard of the norm, you know, and I wouldn't use that an exception as the norm, right? And so that's kind of how I'm like trying to explain this.
Yeah,
that
that's super fair. That's super fair. I mean, like
Yeah.
I'm fully aware that it's like such a smaller part of like the, you know, like the larger population. So
Yeah.
it's totally fine to just use like men, women, like the binary is super useful, and I have no begrudgment with that. But like, so let's take it from the look of like gender dysphoria, right? If the treatment is, you know, kind of like social acceptance from trans people, and like leaning like, hey, like the way we help these people is to call this person, you know, by the chosen gender instead of how you want to gender them, is that also wrong to do?
Well, I do it out of politeness, but I think
Not that it's
Heidi's
wrong, but yeah, there's like actual facts though. I mean, like you're either somebody that, you know, like basically has sperm, or you have, you know, eggs. Like when like it comes down to it, or you're like a rare person that doesn't, you know, isn't able to reproduce. But like you have those parts, which is a biological reality, which makes things very real. I mean, like I can go and say like I'm a man, but then like if I go and get pregnant, then I'm suddenly a pregnant man. And like that is like just
No,
very
I understand that, and I mean,
difficult to like, you know, not just socially, but just like, you know, medically and biologically, and the reality of the situation is like, you know, there's like I'm going to be pregnant. And when we're not talking about just social transition, which I don't really have a problem with social transition, I guess. I mean, I think it's kind of awkward, and like to be like you're a man when you're a woman, it's just, but whatever, that's like fine. But with the medical, or like, and actually getting rid of your ability to reproduce, or your natural, you know, reproductive organs, or like completely changing, you know, your genetic structure, then it's like, well, then that's like really when things change, right? Because it's like you really do have a binary with sex in almost every case. It's like 99% of people are either going to fall in one of these categories. Like you either produce sperm, or you have eggs, and like you have a womb. Like those are just the two ways that humans reproduce, and that is very natural, and that's always been that way. And like it doesn't matter if I ate my twin or not, like I could still get pregnant. Like like none of that like really matters when it comes down to that. So there are certain things that are still very important as male and female, regardless of how we present, or what we want to call ourselves, or how we dress, or like any of those other things are fine. But when it comes down to it, we do have to know, like for many important reasons in society, including like if you get an accident, what sex are you? Like all these things are very, very important to know before, you know, we go into a situation, rather than just are we being polite and like nice to people.
Well,
would you use Blair White's preferred pronouns if you met her? Like, would you call Blair White a she, or would you not?
I typically do if somebody, you know, passes to that extent. I mean, passing it is important. Like people will say, oh, that's not right if somebody, you know, passes, but it is important. Like socially, passing is very important. Like if somebody fully passes like a buck angel to me, like visually as a man, like I would feel awkward, socially awkward calling them she, like to their face, you know. But if they don't pass to me, and I assume that they're a different gender, then I mean, they don't pass. Sorry. Like I just don't, I'm not going to like force myself to be like, oh yeah, I want you to call me, you know, he, when it's like clearly like a female. I might just like not ever talk about them, not refer to them ever, like, and just walk away. Like it's like I don't have to talk about that person. Like I'm not forced to be friends with anybody or have like a social situation, and I can just ignore that and just not mention them and just use their name. I mean, I don't have to actually, you know, participate in it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, like I do think that's always like, I do think folk on the left are bad at that, like just like allowing people to like walk away or just not participate. Like that's one of the things that's, you know, it's a harder thing, and I think that's where the left has done a bad job of like, you know, staying, I don't know, I hate the word amicable, but you know what I mean? Like like,
well, are you attracted to trans women?
I mean, I'm like I'm not fundamentally attracted to somebody because they're trans, but they're
Not
trans
because,
women.
but like, you know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
okay.
there's been trans women I'm attracted to.
Okay. Okay. So you
Uh,
don't see that as like anything weird at all? You think
I mean,
that's
I
sort
guess
of fine?
I'm gonna be the kind of person who's like, you know, I'm pretty like I don't know, individualistic. Like there's a lot of archetypes that I'm attracted to. So,
Okay.
well,
you know, I
people
don't
could also say that it's weird that we're attracted to women, right?
It is
Uh,
weird. It's not
it is
normal. I
weird.
mean, it's not normal.
True.
I mean, like
It's kinda
normal
weird.
is just only heterosexuality, and you know, like there's certain things that
Monogamy,
well, see, but
heterosexual
again,
relationship.
maybe
I
not.
would
You know?
I would push back on that because like the meaning of the word normal, right, is like it's a defined term. So if enough people do it, it becomes normal,
But
right?
But
not
it
enough
can't be
people.
normal to be gay because then we die out. Like it's
But
just then
that's
we
not
don't
that's
exist.
not what the word normal means.
But
Normal is
there's also
What
whatever
is
the most
not that many people are gay though. Like there are.
I agree, but it's a relative term. So in order for
Yeah.
something to be normal, it's just enough people have to do it. Then that's the norm. That's how the word that's what the word means, right? So
Yeah, but
like
for a species to exist, like enough people have to be heterosexual.
I
That's just
agree
like
with that, but that's
how it works.
that's not how normal is. Normal is
Well, it is the norm if everybody does it. I mean, they were
yes,
circular. It's circular.
yeah. But so a behavior being normal is not necessarily like a behavior that needs in order. Like I
I
agree.
don't think normal is good. I don't think
It's
it's
not.
like
Yeah, it's not
I'm not
bad to
making a
be
moral
abnormal.
judgment. Yeah, I'm
but
not
that
like being
well,
like you
but
have
that's
to be
what
normal. It's just
that's
normal. It
why
just is the norm. Yeah.
yeah, but it's why I find it so fascinating when like people get up in arms about what normal is because normal is by definition a relative aspect.
Oh
It's
yeah,
a
like I don't care. Like it's not. I don't see it as being bad that you're. I don't do it. Yeah, I don't have a moral judgment upon what's normal, what's not. It's just a fact that being heterosexual is more normal than being homosexual. It just is.
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's better or you know because that's all like you said comes down to the individual and comes down to context and comes down to so many different factors that are beyond that and you can't just make a moral judgment only based on you know that fact alone. There's a lot more that goes into that.
And like what I was saying earlier, like wearing pants for women was not normal over 100 years ago. Like even if there were extreme cases, which there were also women that were called. They were what were they? They would pretend to be men so that they could go
Yeah.
into the military. like
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
yeah, but these are extreme cases, you know, like the norm was that women didn't wear pants. There's actually if you ever look at like the old anti-suffragette propaganda, it's very funny. Like there's like one where it's
You
just
want
like
to wear pants.
no, there's like one where it's just like a pair of trousers, and then it's like if women start wearing these, what will the men wear? And that's it. That's the tweet. That's the tweet. And I was like, it's so funny.
I
Like,
mean, I've got my kilt. I'm ready.
like
Yeah,
so
that'd be great. I'd love to
So-
see men in kilts and women in pants. It'd be great.
and I think like the conservative pushback here is based on like because they're like it's like an infringement on the norm, right? So like pants were okay, right? And like even I just did a poll on Twitter. I was like, "Do you think women wearing pants is unfeminine?" And almost everyone said no. Or I said like they don't think that it's unfeminine for women to wear pants. It's like
Did
like
you ask if it's
90%.
feminine for men to wear a skirt? For
Oh,
men to wear a
not
dress?
yet, but
Okay.
I bet it will be yes though.
Mhm.
But then I was talking to Rin beforehand. Like I think even then, like if you look at someone like David Bowie or Prince or something like that, they played with that androgyny and
Yeah.
it wasn't inherently feminine.
I think it's
You know?
masculine for masculine people to do masculine. Like basically, if a masculine person does a thing, to me, that's still them being like they don't stop being masculine. Like
I
So-
just think androgyny is normal. I think that you know in a way like most people fall you know in between. Most people are not at the extremes and I think that used to be more okay for a period of time like thinking of like David Bowie and Prince. That was all like kind of like the 80s you know kind of time period where that started happening which is historically called like an unraveling. So it's kind of when a culture starts to like kind of knows who they are, and then it starts the culture, the thread of the culture starts to unravel a bit. And so that's what we've been going through. So at the start of that, you saw like people just being comfortable being like androgynous and being like, yeah, like you look at Pat Benatar's and like everybody else, like women had shaved heads, like Sinead O'Connor and all this different stuff. And it was fine. Like androgyny was like super cool. And then that kind of turned into like, okay, well then that, then we can transition genders, or there's no gender. And like, we're just like completely like unraveling like the fabric to where we're going to get, to the point where we have these extremes. Now we have like the Samira, being like hyper feminine. And then you have like whoever the masculine version would even be, like talking about what's hyper masculine. And then we're kind of going to redefine that and then, start over again. So I think that what we're just seeing is that as a society kind of evolves, like we kind of redefine what these terms mean, and we're just redefining everything right now, what feminine, and masculine mean, and that's totally fine. It's just that we're progressing and we're learning and we're doing things, but in the end, like I think that all of these things are gonna, balance out, because you can't have like 90% of people being transgender and like not being able to reproduce or something. Like it's just will die out. So I think that there's gonna be a backlash and like a return to kind of just, yeah, let's just like, be normal and like have like babies and shit again. Like, I mean, I think that's coming, and we're just seeing that kind of tension right now, because it's just like at its
I hate it that it has to always swing so far. Like, because that's the thing.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's humans, man.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Rin had a great analogy that I loved, and I stole from him and posted on Twitter once. Was that like that progressivism is the gas pedal and conservatism is the brakes, right? And like you kind of need both to like check each other, right? And but what sucks is that it's always like one always like gets like way too crazy, and then the other side has to get really crazy, and that's my fear, because it's like this constant escalation on either side. And to be honest, I don't want to like go and live in like this where it is socially unacceptable for a woman to like wear pants or any of those things.
Not the Handmaiden's Tale.
No, exactly. Like I wouldn't want that, where it's like go back in the kitchen. Like I don't want that to happen. And what's funny is I don't even think a lot of these trad women on Twitter want that to happen either. Because in the truth of the matter is that women's opinions didn't fucking matter. And like they just didn't fucking matter. And they can pretend they're like, no, I'm an anti-feminist. I'm like, the fact that you're even using Twitter to spout off your opinions right now means that you are reaping the benefits that feminism of first wave gave you, and you are ungrateful and privileged. And like because what could happen is like they could be like, no, women have to go back, and they can't go into the public sphere. But not saying that maybe that's not realistic. Maybe we've progressed enough that it will never get to that point again. I don't know. Cultures can change, shift like quickly. So I feel like there has to be some sort of historical like framework where it feels like everyone doesn't really know history, because even all of the people that are anti-feminist or hate feminism or whatever, because there's lots of bad things that came out of feminism. Sure. I will like even like second wave. Like I hate Gloria Steinem and Kate Millett and all those.
Yeah, there's consequences.
Yeah. So like,
I want to ask though, are there historical precedences for dramatic cultural shifts within contiguous societies?
Yes.
Can you? I don't know.
Do you mean like the cultural changes, like extreme?
Yeah.
Well.
Like to the degree that we're seeing.
To be fair, like if you think about it, like a lot of our values, which I think a lot of our values really does stem from like the Greco-Roman culture. Yeah. Like people act people act like modesty was like a Christian idea. That was not. That was cultural norm already. Like modesty, they had a word for it. Chastity, all these things were very much. Yeah. For women in particular, chastity didn't matter for men.
Or look in the Bible too. I mean,
it was very red pill.
Yeah. I mean, there's biblical stories of people having, crazy times and stuff. And then like, whatever, God's like cut it out and like floods it. I mean, like, I think that there's always been this ebb and flow, because that's how humans work. Like we like progress and progress and progress till we're like bored. So we start messing with our gender or like having like crazy sex parties or eating like just crazy amounts of food. And then suddenly it's like, that's enough. And then we like kind of start over again. I think it's just, it's a cycle. Everything is so cyclical, like how we progress as a society. And then we always like kind of go back. to the foundations, which are more archaic and more traditional, and then we kind of build back up again. It's like we're constantly like breathing almost. It's like we're breathing as a species. And when it
isn't that
yeah.
tethered to hardship though? Like, those
Yeah.
things, like, like when people are like when you need to be fucking farmers, nobody has time to fucking,
Yeah.
figure out like
Oh,
what's
yeah,
my
exactly.
I can
like
think of extreme societal examples actually. Nazi
yeah, give me
Germany and Soviet Union
mm,
and China, Mao. Those were
yeah,
extreme. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm like authoritarianism. No matter what side, I am very much like no. Like that's where
well, based on
people
those
can like
examples, wouldn't you say that we're handling it better?
currently, yeah. But that's always my fear is when I see people kind of push like this almost authoritarian narrative where it's like, we need to promote prohibition and we need to like
Oh yeah,
make
it's not
these
gonna work.
things. Yeah. Like, so there's a difference between saying like, I dislike this in the culture, like I want the culture to be X, Y, and Z. But it's completely different when you try to legislate it or when you try to like
Mm.
create some sort of authoritarian structure to make it go in that way. But the thing is that it has happened. It's not.
It could happen again. I mean, we could have a communist revolution in America. I mean, it's like people are plotting to have it all the time, like they would love it. And, they're trying to push that constantly. So I think that it could
wonder, should we do the like, your kid
or a fascist revolution?
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. Yeah.
Yeah.
You catch your kid fucking like playing around with gender. It's like catching your kid smoking. So it's like, all right, you need to fucking,
See, no, I don't think so. Like, because kids used to play around with gender and then it was fine. You would just be like, that's normal, like part of being a kid. And now it's like either one way or the other. Like either I'm going to like spank you on the butt and be like, boys don't do that. Or you have to change and transition to be a,
I think by drawing attention to it it's like when kids were just
exactly.
kids,
just let them do it. Like, just that's the thing is like being a tomboy. When I was growing up, I was in a very traditional family and very conservative, but they didn't see that as anything weird. That was just like a normal thing. Yeah. Some girls like are tomboys and they, they like to play sports more and whatever. And that's just how it works. And it's not a big deal. And I think that little boys playing with dolls or like wanting to wear like, a dress or like play dress up and stuff is like, no one should like flinch really. Because it's kids being kids. Kids want to be like a dinosaur one day or like a unicorn, and like to be like the opposite gender is like not even that far of what you want to be, like as a kid. So allowing kids to just do that and have it not be a big deal, I think is very important. And we've gotten away from that. We've had like extreme gender ideology on both ends. And it's like, fighting each other to be like, who's going to win out. But in the end, like it'll just be, I think we'll just go back to like it just being normal. Just like,
so to me, both sides though, it really like we're almost like holding it like in the same way that like Twitter fucking talks about the fucking thing and keeps it going. I think that like this is the kind of thing where it's like just like give it a generation or two and just like I don't know, I to me I'm one of those people that's like if it really is just a phase, like it'll be a phase that goes away. And if this is like a thing that's happening because of reasons, it won't go away, and we'll like that'll be a thing. But we keep arguing about it. We talked about this in the beginning of the episode. We're in a cultural transition period, so all kinds of shit is up in the air. And it's like I feel like the more we argue about things, the more we are like drawing focus. So now there's going to be people who like potentially transition because this is like it's this, what I mean? Like there was people who would do people who do drugs to escape because it's like I have a fucking shit situation, I want to do them. But other people who were like, I'm going to do drugs because I'm a rebel and I'm told not to do them.
I think that is what's happening. But I think social media is encouraging that. I mean, I think I agree with you too. Like, I think these things need to be talked about. It just sucks that people are talking about them in kind of a
right and wrong way.
Like all or nothing kind of fashion where it's like, this is always bad, this is always good, because like if you're not, because then it comes down to like not being honest about the situation. You can have your own moral perceptions about what is right and wrong, and that's totally fine. But like even like you can have, for example, like sex work, right? You can have your moral opinions on like, I wouldn't do this. I might not morally agree with it, but I could also say these are the consequences. This is what happens. Like if you become a sex worker, you need to kind of look at these choices. Like if you do this, these things could potentially happen to you, you might not want to make this decision, right? So that's different than just societally shaming, because I don't think shame works in a lot of ways. Like, I think that the right things that works. I think that if someone was going to do something, they will end up, if you shame them and try to get them not to do it, I think that it will potentially just like come out in other ways that might be even worse.
I mean, that's literally Victorian era kinks, right?
I know, right?
Those people, let's just shame everything, and then they are the
Freud
most
had a job for a reason.
sexually deviant fucking people.
I think that's always going to be a thing. There's always going to be deviant people, and they're going to be pushing it to the extreme. And it's, you know.
So we actually talk about that as like a weird, like, if you had like some kind of like utopia where nobody fucking did anything wrong to each other, would you lose some of the like deviance? Like, would the like extreme hedonism go away that's driven by, because a lot of kink is a reaction to like things that happen in your life, and it's like
well, it's not possible in this realm, at least, to have
no, I agree.
what
It's
you're
like
talking about. So because we have duality, and we have, you know, the anything good that happens, there's an opposite bad thing somewhere happening, or vice versa, you know. And it's always like, you don't know if something's good or bad until enough time has passed. You know, it could be, oh, I broke my leg, this is horrible, but then like somehow that ends up being like whatever saves your life. It's like that Chinese proverb where the son breaks his leg, you know, and then they're like, oh, horrible, and then they come and they're looking for soldiers, and it's like, oh, you can't go now, you know, your son gets to stay. Okay, oh great, you know. And it's like, well, maybe not, you know. It's just time has to pass before you can make those types of judgments. So we don't know until enough time has passed what's good and what's bad. But either way, like, I think that on this realm, like, there has to be dark forces or dark energy or something going on if there's anything good. I just believe in a complete balance of whatever's happening.
You're
if we
yin
have
and
like
yang.
yeah, if we have like somebody doing some great thing like curing cancer or something, then someone's over here like doing some horrible, like, you know, torturing humans thing, like on the other end of it, you know, or like there's always going to be some reaction. And so if we're having great prosperity, we're having great innovation, then there's also going to be great evil and great, like, you know, other things on the other end. And if we're all kind of just archaic, I guess, and like not really doing much, then there probably will be like less extreme of that, because like you said, we're going to be busy, we're going to be just like trying to survive and like trying to live. But when we have all this time, all this free energy and time because of, you know, prosperity, then suddenly the extremes are going to get even more extreme. But something always knocks us on our butt. Like the Roman Empire fell. You know, history tends to knock us on our butt. There tends to be a depression, a war, civil war, some strife that brings us down, and then we all work together and build back up again. And that's just kind of what
like,
is
it's
always
sad
happened.
to think that like we need a crisis to like
We
get
do.
our
We're
shit
humans.
together.
we had one, and it didn't. It was just like
COVID?
the most mediocre
No.
fucking crisis.
Well,
We've been in crisis mode. Like we're in crisis mode now, which is going to last like 25 years, but we haven't hit the peak of it yet, like completely. We're not like at that moment where it's like something massive yet.
Are we expecting barbarians from like northern Canada to come down?
Invasion from the north.
Yeah,
I don't know. Cannibals from Haiti now is the thing.
Oh God. Well, I didn't see that video. People on Twitter will share like horrible things. Like there was someone that like beheaded their father, and like that was
I
being
saw
shared.
that. That was horrible.
I can't. Like I can't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so bad. Like I have to, like, if it's not
You
everything,
have to look
like
at
not everything, but like some things, like I'm like,
and I'm gross because I'll noodle. I'm gross because I'll noodle a catfish. And
you're gross. But yeah, I thought, because I was like, well, I have to see, like, you know, honestly, I have to know if it's real or not. And I'm like, I don't know, it looks pretty messed up. It looks pretty real. And then it just like got swept under the rug. You never heard about it again. That like really creeps me out. But anyway, yeah.
Did you watch the Haiti video too? The cannibal one?
Was it like a dude standing there? Was it like a dude
like
standing
like a guy was like eating flesh. Like Ben watched it because he's sick.
I think I saw it for like 1 second, but that's one that I didn't seek out. I didn't want to like, no, I don't know. I have my lines. Everybody has their line. But
yeah, I don't. Yeah. I was like, I can't watch it. He's like, it was like, there's no way. Is
it? Are we not sure if it's real, or are we just watching?
No, I think it is. I think it is real. Yeah, saw the barbecue video. Yeah, someone said that they accidentally saw it. It is real.
I don't need that in my life. Yeah,
I know. Well, and that was actually because me and him were talking about moral relativism before we started, and one thing we used like murder as an example, and like how like one person might morally think murder is good, right? I mean, personally, I think it's like we all know that it's not, right? But
no, not to say that some people might think murder is good, but that some people might think some flavors of killing someone else is good, like morally justified self-defense.
Right.
There are people
Or
who
you're
are
killing somebody that's really bad. Like this person's
yeah.
like already a murderer or like a pedophile or something, and you're like, we gotta take him out. Then yeah, you could justify it. I
but
mean,
even then, I'm not like pro death penalty or anything. So like
not
even
either.
then,
But if the community, what if the community like knows somebody's like raping kids and like we
Yeah.
like know it for a fact? Would like
I'm
shouldn't you all
pro
get
prison
together
labor,
and
but that's a
Yeah.
difference.
pro prison
No, but-
labor? I would just be like pro
But all
out
right,
of here. You're done.
but they're a part of this. In this scenario, they're a part of the system that, you know, like, so maybe they're like a fucking kid of a cop or something like that, and they're just not, you know, like that's the problem, right? You can always find a scenario where, you know, the right solution doesn't work for some reason. So then it's just like the next step and then the next step. You can always.
Samira was not from the other side of the world, though. She was born and raised in America. I know she's from New Jersey, but she was
What
born
part of New
in
Jersey?
But she's
That could be the other side of the world. Yeah. Some parts of New Jersey are pretty sketch.
I'm from New
Malaysian
Jersey. So.
Saya.
Yeah.
But the point
Look at
being
that.
is that she does kind of push this whole idea that like Eastern femininity is like what femininity is
The
meant
standard.
to be. It's the
Yeah.
standard, right? So even if she's born in the US, the point is that she is
I love Australian
ancestral-
women.
What?
But isn't there?
I love Australian women.
All right. Isn't there a whole push though? Don't you think to like make the U.S. like Sharia law or something? Like I feel like there's like this whole thing to be like, Westernism is bad and we should really be like Middle
on
East
Twitter
and
for sure, but I don't know
you
how
know?
realistic that is outside of Twitter. That's the thing, because
Well,
I do feel
there's
like
a lot
that's
of-
there.
There's people in Congress now that are Muslim and that like at a larger percentage than ever before and that are not from here, and I think that that's like increasing. So I mean, I just think that there's different competing values or sex in the culture war. Like I think a lot of people are trying to get in there because they see that there's like a void right now in the American culture and somebody wants to fill it, right? Like is it going to be whatever the Islam culture, or is it going to be communism, or is it going to be freaking fascism, or is it going to be populism? Are we going to go back to like the 50s, or like everyone's trying to like figure out like what's going to fill this like emptiness that like people seem to have, or that our culture seems to have. So I just think it's one competing energy going on.
It feels like a lot of people are having an identity crisis.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's what it is. It's like this massive identity. It's because the culture is made out of people, right? And so when you have a fuck ton of people having an identity crisis, then it's like, oh, like the culture is a hot fucking mess. So that's what it feels like to me. Cause it feels like that, like even just on Twitter, which I try to be like, Twitter is not real. Twitter is not real. Like I have to like every time I like see something that triggers me, I have to like kind of like woo-saw myself back to be like, okay, I need to go touch grass and hang out with people and remind myself that normal people don't think like this.
Good thing you don't live in Portland, because then you're like, oh wow, it really is this bad. Like, okay, let me go back online. Let me go back.
I have like a lot of friends that like are very I have like basic frat bro friends, right? That are just like very I don't know, apolitical, but just like normie, right? Just normal. I don't know how to explain it. Just normal.
Dudes. They're just dudes.
Just some bros.
Yeah,
Just bros. And then like I have
stuff, man.
Rin and all of them. They're like, I guess there's like a little bit more like people that lean on the left or more
I still stand by this. I'm a centrist. I'm
I
the token progressive because I'm left of libertarian.
Yeah. But so for me it feels like I don't know that like if I like go and like hang out with people that like aren't, I don't know, as tapped in, it makes me realize, okay, maybe most people aren't like this. Like maybe this isn't like as big of a cultural issue, but I don't know. I can't tell if social media really driving and pushing culture, like TikTok and Twitter. Like, is it influencing culture that much? Because I know at least on Twitter, it's not, I can't even remember what the percentage, but it's like 10% or 19% of people of the population in the US is on Twitter. It's not like huge, but like, I don't know about TikTok. I heard TikTok as like the largest platform is like the largest social media.
I mean,
platform.
a lot of young people, I think like how many young people is a huge deal, because get them when they're young, is massive. Like if you really do change somebody's mind when they're younger, then that could be permanent, like especially with transitioning and all these other things. And if you're really going that direction, I mean, yeah, then I think that could change society. I mean, if you're making people sterile, I mean, they're not going to have kids. So
I don't think TikTok pushes one way or the other. It pushes both, right? It like you push your own way. So you have people becoming. I think it. To me, it's not like going in a direct. I could be wrong, but my assumption is that it's pushing people away from the middle. So it's polarizing as opposed to like.
It's whatever people want. It's whatever keeps them on the platform more. That's how algorithms work. So if somebody's like, ooh, maybe I'm trans, and they start searching for that stuff or like pulling up that stuff, then it's going to feed them more. And it's like, oh, they like it. Like, let's keep them on the platform more. It's just an algorithm. And it's not like necessarily, nefarious or not. It's just like, what does that person want to see and how long will they stay on the platform so that we can make the maximum amount of money out of them. And so if that happens to be it and that content gets pushed, then that can change society. I think any social media algorithm can do that. That's why algorithms are so dangerous, because it's like really just keeping you on that platform as long as possible in a separate reality from the actual reality that's going on like around you.
There's no morality to it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it doesn't care. It's just like stay on as long as you can. And like, I mean, just Twitter, X, it doesn't matter, Instagram, all of these like will keep you on as long as possible. And if you're online that much and like you're not in your community, you're not with your family, you're not with your friends, then that can change you. I mean, I don't know how it couldn't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think and I think that it's very affected. Like it's definitely affecting kids. But now there's like this TikTok ban, right?
I'm not for that. Obviously, that's
ridiculous. I'm not either. But it's kind of like, okay, what? Because I think that's bad. Right. We don't want a TikTok ban. What is the libertarian solution? Because I do think that really it comes down to parenting, but then it's like, okay, but you can't make every parent not suck. Right?
Do you do libertarians think that it's okay to ban cigarettes for minors?
Well, I wouldn't legislate that, to be honest. I mean, I wouldn't legislate, but okay, you don't want to get into the weeds about what I wouldn't legislate. Okay, we don't want to go there.
Yeah, last time we went out there, I was defending child labor laws, so that's
but there's nuance. That's my problem.
Yeah, sometimes if you're like an anarchist, you'd be like, no law. Like, I mean, that's up to the parents, to control what their kids are consuming, and if they're not, then like, that's on them, because like then the kid becomes like its own little free spirit, and like what are you gonna do? Like who's supposed to step in? That would be like the extreme position is like no, there shouldn't be any law.
I'm not anti any law, by the way.
So here's
that would be like the extreme. That would be the extreme anarchist. I'm not. That's not mine either. But it just depends on how far you want to go. But
I never want to be the one who's defending the government. But like there are so. Like I'm
a minarchist, so I end up in that position in libertarian circles. So
so like to me, like Boston and like Massachusetts is a perfect example of this. So it is illegal to have happy hours in Boston, and that's not some like Puritan law. It's because we had them so much to the point that people died. So it was like, okay, clearly we're not responsible enough together to be able to have nickel beer night.
Yeah, but then that's taking responsibility off of you and being like, the government needs to protect me from myself. And
and if it's not safe, then like it's kind of like tough, like that's kind of Darwinism in a way. Like it's sort of just like, well, sorry, like it's like making it illegal for somebody to be a drunkard, right? Or like that's one of the examples that's used.
So
like,
that's
that
super
bad
fun.
For them? Yeah.
But if those things, like if people weren't drinking and driving and killing other people, right? Like that's a super valid argument. But as soon as the behavior starts endangering other people, that's what you're not allowed to shoot other people, but you're like, no, that's like no
yeah,
laws.
but if there's somebody that can drink and be like totally drunk and never heard anything,
I agree.
That's like the whole thing, right? It's like there's some people that are like that can just drink and drive and like never hurt a person ever, and like that's just how they can function. And there's other people that can't do that at all. Couldn't even have a sip of alcohol and go and drive because they would just be like they're allergic to it or whatever. They're sensitive to it, and they would make them, crazy and crash into something. But like you can't be like, we can't legislate for every single individual like situation.
We legislate to like nearly the lowest common denominator. That's how it works. Like there's tons of people who can drive 100 miles an hour, but we don't let that be the speed limit, because for anybody who can't and thinks they can, that's a bad thing. So like we have shitty fucking like, I don't know, like I wish like, because like who can do it? Germans can do that. It turns out, Germans are like, why would we need the law for this? We just do it right, and like I didn't understand that. Like, there's a fucking the toll system in the trains in Germany. They don't. You buy the ticket and then you just get on the train. And I was like, well, wouldn't people just like not buy the ticket? And they're like, I don't understand. It's a good service. Why wouldn't you pay for it? And I was like, this is why we can't have nice things, but you guys can. Like, you can have Autobahn.
Liberty. Like, liberty isn't perfect. Like, it's just like, what do you want to? But it's just basically like, what is the system that produces the best results overall for the individual, or and like, or or is it?
No, I agree with that.
And so, like, it's just the idea of liberty is that then you're taking into account that individual rather than the entire group and trying to like make it perfect for everybody, because then that can just get distorted so easily and like turned on its head so fast. But so the cost to liberty is like homeless people on the street and like things like that. Like, technically we have a very free society because you can be homeless on the street, right? And you can like do these types of things. You can't just jump on the train and like not pay or like whatever. There's consequences, but you can like technically do it, and it doesn't make society that much better, but you don't have that authoritarian like fear, either. So it's like,
no, I agree with
trade-offs. There's huge trade-offs. Like, it's like, it's not going to be perfect. Like, even anarchists will tell you that's not going to be perfect. It's literally called anarchy. Like, like it's not going to be a perfect utopia. But it's going to like, basically maximize each individual's liberty over like collectivism, which would be the other way, to be like, how can we go for these like extreme cases and make sure everybody's as safe as possible, and nothing ever happens to them, which is impossible anyway.
No, and I agree. Yeah. I don't hate a balance. Like, I'm okay with like collective choices, especially when it's like we had it for the individuals and it was like, well, there's enough fucking people ruining it for everybody. It's like, yeah, okay, we got to take those away.
I mean, but and back to like the social media aspect of like banning it, because like the thing is, for me, is that I do think that it influences culture to a degree. I just don't know how much. It does seem to be at least somewhat influential on a somewhat mass scale, but then it comes down to like what we have is more of, it's like a cultural issue, because I do think the United States, I mean, we're not we're I guess we would be considered free in the freest in a lot of ways. But obviously we're not free enough for me because I'm a libertarian. But
is it possible to be totally free with any sort of government? Like, probably not, but that's how it is.
Small micronations maybe, but even then.
Yeah, with a large population and a large landmass, probably not. Like, it's very difficult to.
But back to like, so with Germany, it's like, it seems like they have a culture, right?
They're also less free. Yeah,
they're less free. They have fear too. They've had rampant authoritarianism, obviously, and they don't want that anymore. So they behave. They're like, oh, we all behave.
But
right? Yeah. Like, we don't want to get our asses beat again, so let's pay the toll. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny to think about that, because didn't they like almost win against everyone? And it's like,
very close. I mean,
but they didn't though.
Or did they?
But they didn't.
Are you looking right at? Are you looking right at Germany when you say that? Like,
yeah, but they didn't. Mic drop. This was a really great episode. I really enjoyed talking to you, Heidi.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Give a little spiel on where people can find you, what you up to, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so please do find me on X/Twitter. Sorry, Brandy. At Heidi Briones, and you could find my longer form writing at HeidiBriones.com. And that's pretty much it for now. But if you go to my Twitter account, you'll see my pinned post has everywhere else that I'm on, such as Rumble, YouTube, and all that other fun stuff. But yeah, definitely come find me.
Cool.
And Ren,
I don't have any.
Ren just lives in the real.
I got two girlfriends. Just leave me alone.
I got two girlfriends.
Those are just the two. I've never mind.
Oh, you have more than
He's
that.
got more than two.
Those are just the two mains. Okay. Those are
all right.
5 pieces. All right.
Oh no.
We already did the poly episode. We don't need to do it anymore.
Yes.
Okay. All right. This person, name a Muslim Congress member pushing Sharia. Sharia law. Yeah.
I didn't say that. I said that there's different sects. And that's just part of the equation, is that we do have more Muslim influence than we ever had. and we've had more in Congress than we've ever had, and we have Muslim Congress people. Okay, so I didn't say that
Europe has had more now than it's ever had.
Yeah, I mean that's just a fact, is that the West has more Eastern influence than it's ever had, whether it's China or whatever else. I mean, I think that's just a fact. I'm not saying that there's a congressperson trying to pass Sharia law. That's not really happening, obviously, but there is people that would like there to be, less Western culture in the West, and would like it to be more Islamic or more religious or even more Christian, whatever it is. So that was my point. Not that there's a specific, push in Congress to have Sharia law. That's not what I was saying.
Did that clear that up for you?
All right, whether it did or not, whatever. Yeah.
GG's, y'all. Thanks for hanging. I will actually be live again probably in like an hour or so to play some video games and vibe. So bye.